Hey, thanks again for joining us. I'm Charlie Lofton, the lead pastor at the Grove Church, and I have once again Mark Freeman. What's up?
Woohoo. Yeah, man.
Yeah, executive pastor at the Grove Church, and we have been talking about discipleship. We spent some time talking first about just kind of what that word even means, what is discipleship, and looked at the Great Commission in Matthew 28, where it talks about first being baptized, being someone who is a transformed believer in the gospel, but then that the big picture idea of being a disciple is someone who is being taught how to obey everything that Jesus commands. And that's kind of a big thing. And then, like how people talk about that, talk about discipling, talk about one person discipling another person. So last time we talked about the importance of having a mentor, or what is kind of essential as far as having somebody else on that journey with you. But as we go back, as I've been thinking about this, Mark, in Matthew 28, it says that teaching them to obey everything that I've commanded. So we have here Jesus saying, if you want to be my disciple, what a disciple does, what a disciple is someone who obeys everything I've commanded. And that just feels like a lot of weight. That feels very heavy, that there's just a lot to that. And I think about contrasting that with Ephesians 2:8-9, which is kind of a real critical theological verse for the church as a whole, certainly for us at the Grove Church, where Paul says this, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." And so we really emphasize that really basically what Paul is saying is there's not a good thing that you can do to earn the favor of God. Mm-hmm. But in order to be a disciple of Jesus, you have to do everything. So you get to be the resident theologian today in our podcast, and you can just kind of help me bring any level of clarity to that you would like.
Oh man, I tell you what, that is the tension, because what you just said from Ephesians it's so critical, and so it seems like the two are at war with one another, and but we know that the heart of the gospel that we cannot get away from is that that this grace of God is something that's given and not earned. So we can't miss it, but it's real dangerous, because when we go down that road and we start talking about obedience, naturally, how much are these things required?
Right.
Is the question that we start to battle with. And from my story, we shared a little bit last time, I real quickly began to take those things and bring too much attention to whether I was doing them or not doing them. And as I started trying to help other people grow, I think that's one of the things that I wished I hadn't passed, that I did pass. I brought so much attention to the actions that the reason for the actions started to get lost a bit. And I just think about all of the relationships in my life that are meaningful and loving. My marriage relationship, my relationship with my children. There are things that a dad has to do. And then there's this whole other list of things that I do as a father, because I'm driven by a love for them,
Right. Yeah.
And man, I can't imagine what a lifeless, loveless household we would have if I did all the things I was supposed to do because I was supposed to do them. I got up in the morning, I'm like, man, I'm supposed to do these things. And if I do these things, then, and not driven by a real love from a family.
We obsess a little bit over the word required. What is required of me in order to be a Christian? Well, no, believe and trust in Jesus. Hey, I just use trust in Jesus because it's by grace. Jesus did all the work. There's nothing is required. Oh, if nothing is required of me, then that means I don't have to do anything, which is just, I don't know if that's a uniquely American thing. I don't know if that's an American Christian thing, but somehow that if I say it's not required of you, you don't have to do it. I'm not going to lie to you, bro. That was the first thing that I did on syllabus day in college for 4 years. You pull out the syllabus, they would be assigning homework and you're like, do you have to turn it in? Because if I don't have to turn in the homework, I'm not going to do it. If you're not grading it, I'm not doing it. And I think we bring a work mindset, we bring a school mindset to what it means to be a Christian, as opposed to what you just did, which is a relationship mindset. What is required of me to be married to my wife? I pledge. That's it. I pledge to be your husband. Now Heidi is my wife, and like that's it. I'm married now, and there's nothing that is required of me. But if I could just tweak words a little bit, what is necessary for me? Everything. I mean, I need to give her everything that I have. I need to serve her and love her and get to know her and pursue her. And I mean, just it's all necessary, even if it's not required. And I think we've got to figure out a way to I don't know, straddle the line. I don't know if that's the right. I mean, walking a really fine line there, because I think churches or ministries can go bad either direction. Where we say, because it's all free, nothing's necessary. Nothing is necessary. It's nothing. I don't have to do it. Or we can so talk about obedience that we lose sight of the gospel and that it was freely given. So maybe we could go back a little bit to your story. Like, did you ever find yourself at a time where you feel like you kind of lost the thread a little bit and started just being real works oriented? And what was that like? And how did you get out?
Yeah, I definitely did. In fact, I will often refer to myself as a recovering legalist, because I feel like that's my makeup and being in that place where I did. I mean, I started to take some pride in verses memorized, or times that I had taken that gospel and shared it with someone else, or books of the Bible that I had studied it in depth, but I started to feel the lifelessness of that, and also the expectations of more and more and more, and my value somehow being tied to how much more. And there's actually a book that I read. So talking about different people speaking into our lives, there was a book by a guy named Brennan Manning called The Ragamuffin Gospel that somebody handed to me. And it was just, man, I'm talking, I think he even says this, 90 proof grace, just a book of a lot of, audacious statements about the love of God being so big. And some of what we're talking about today, like things that were hard for me to hear because I had gotten so far in the other ditch. And I actually named our second child after Brennan, because it was so impactful to me to pull me back to center.
Right. I like your use of the word value, because I think that can really help us a little bit in our understanding of kind of this very fine distinction we're making between required and necessary. Like, what can you do to increase your value in the eyes of God? What can you do to decrease your value with God? The answer to both of those questions is nothing. There isn't anything that I can do. You, at our worst, in our sin, God declared us to be so valuable that he sent his own son to die for us. So we are forgiven and loved, and God sacrificed the most precious thing, the most important person in the, and he gave his life. He gave his life for us. There's what other, like, plus what? Like plus what? And then the scriptures talk about that, that we've been justified, we've been made right. It talks about that, that we are adopted as God's sons and daughters. It talks about that he's kind of put his seal on us. And so it also tells us there's nothing, I can't add anything to what Jesus did. And once God has put his seal on us, once he has adopted me, that's it. I am his. You can't lose that. Your value is set. And again, I think it is only the warped, twisted mind that responds to this incredible display of sacrificial love and says, that means I can do whatever I want. So obedience, is it the word obedience? Is that the problem? Like obedience, is that a triggering word? Is there a better word, or is it like, man, we just need to redeem that? Because I don't obey my wife. You use this illustration of being a dad, you're not obeying your kids. Is obedience a bad word, or is it the word and we just need to figure it out?
Well, it goes back to a little bit, I think the first of this series when you you said that Jesus leads out in Matthew 28 with all authority on heaven on earth has been given to me. Obedience is scary but we like to bring him down just because his love is that great, just because his love is that big, just because he has done all that for us doesn't make him any less king, doesn't make him any less creator, God, who has the authority to say that this is the way life should look. And then also to adopt that, we believed and bought in and follow him because we believe that the best life is found there. If we didn't believe that, just like you're talking about getting married, you wouldn't have pledged it.
Right. If
you didn't think that life would be better living in unity with your bride, so then why would you not do that then? If you really thought that that's the best life was found there, then why would you commit and then not do that?
That's good. I think a lot of this does come from, at least historically, with American Christianity, an over obsession with heaven. So heaven is the carrot, right? Hey, believe in God and you get to go to heaven. That's the carrot. And the stick is, well, if you disappoint God, then you don't get to go to heaven. Well, if you teach that the stick is gone and the only carrot is heaven, and so now that's not up for debate anymore, then it actually makes a perverted sense that therefore I can do whatever I want. Because if that's all that's going on here, but if the king of the universe sacrifices himself for you and shows you a huge display of love, there's two things there. One, he's the king, and two, an overwhelming amount of love. If our response isn't love, service, obedience, we've missed the thread here somewhere.
Right. And also that's such a good point. And thinking future tense kingdom also keeps us from trying to, bring the kingdom here, in our life and in our relationships. And it's possible that we could experience that kingdom's presence by our obedience. So, but if you're only thinking future tense, then,
right.
I better live it up while I can. And
I'm not trying to be tricky here, but did you notice that when I was reading Ephesians 2 that I stopped one verse short?
No, I missed it.
You didn't notice? Okay, so 2, 8, and 9. For it is by grace you've been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. Lots of times we stop there, like memory verse packets will stop there, but that is, you have not gotten to the end of Paul's thought. Paul's thought on this ends with verse 10. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. So he's got several little plays on word there that Paul's doing. It's like, you have not been saved by your works. Otherwise, you would be able to brag about it. It is a complete gift. It is completely by grace from God. But you are the work. You are the handiwork. You are a sculpture. You are a piece of art. You are the thing that is being worked. God is working you. So again, God is doing work. So He is shaping you. He is molding you to do good works. So it's not your works that save you. You're the work. God's doing a work in you, but He's doing this work in you so that then you will do works. So I think it is very often there's an order problem. We've talked this a lot. If you've ever joined us on a Sunday or you've been in a part of the Grove, we talk about this, that there's an order to this. It begins with the gospel. Then it's the transformative work that God does on the inside. He's doing work. And then once God has done His work, then we can work. But if we get that out of balance, I've got to do the work so that God will do something for me so that then I can go to heaven. Mm-hmm. You're always just going to be, you're going to be completely out of balance. So,
and very frustrated.
Yes. But even these good works, so you're the work created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance. Mm-hmm. So God already did all the, he already did a lot of the work. He did the work in you. He laid out your path. He's prepared the works for you. Now you just walk. And it's really cool. And I feel like that we have, I don't want to say that we've overcomplicated this because it's a deep thing, but I don't think it's quite as impossible to understand as we've made it. This idea of God God gave me this awesome life for free. He's the king of the universe, and it is a natural response to obey. Mm. So knowing we've got a wide variety of people listening, we maybe have some people who are stuck in, it's all free. I don't have anything to do. I don't have to obey. I'm just, what advice would you give that person? And then maybe you've got somebody who is feeling a lot of anxiety about a tenuous relationship with God because they're not being good enough. What advice would you give them?
Oh, the two different groups?
Two different pieces of advice, one for each group.
Yeah. I mean, to both, Charlie, for me, it's, if my relationship with Jesus is at the core of who I am, and I love him deeply, and he has my attention, and that's what's driving my actions. Then there's life there. There's power there to do those things. There's grace there. But the minute that it shifts to, what I'm doing and I'm looking at myself, then the whole thing starts to fall apart. So to the person who's saying, I don't have to do anything, this is free, then my question would be, so walk me back through how you met Jesus and in your love for him. And, you mentioned John 14:21, and it says those who have my commands and keep them, they're the ones who love me. That there's this love driving this obedience. And then on the other side, if too much attention is brought to the works, and you're saying that you're frustrated, like I feel like I'm not keeping up enough, then his grace abounds.
Right. Well, you cheated there a little bit, but I really loved what you said. I told you to give two pieces of advice. You just gave the one, because really both problems are very similar in that we don't really fully understand the gospel. We don't really understand what that display of love that Jesus sacrifice on the cross, really what that means. Because if we did, we would not ever struggle with worrying about our position being unsafe. And we certainly would not be unmotivated to love him back. So no matter where you are, go back to the gospel.
That's right.
That's a good word. Well,
and we just, studied through Colossians. How did he word it there? As you began in him, so continue.
That's good.
That gospel is not something we graduate from. It's something we go deeper into. And so all the answers to these questions all go back to this Jesus is incredible, and he's worthy to be followed and obeyed, and he's done the work and wants to work in us. And, just as we received him.
That's good. Well, I really do hope. I hope you guys that are listening, I really do. We want you to be motivated to be a disciple, that you will not allow any fear or anxiety that somehow that your relationship depends on this. We also don't want you to be sitting around thinking that somehow that you're off the hook just because God's love is unconditional. This is something that God is calling each and every one of us to become a disciple, to be a disciple, and to make disciples. And so we talked about kind of what that is. We talked about how we need help. We've talked about kind of this, making sure we understand the balance of this theology behind it. And I hope you will join us next. We're just spend some time just talking about some good old-fashioned practical tips. And so we are really glad that you joined us again. Encourage you to join us at the Grove on a Sunday or online at thegrovechurch.org. Thanks again for being here with us.